Good morning, friends. Welcome. This will be our third Advent presentation that we've been doing on YouTube to take the place of our Wednesday services. Once again, I remind you of COVID, which you know and know all too well. I want to emphasize a few people have been letting their guard down. We don't want to do that, okay? Continue to wear the mask. Continue to wash your hands. Continue to social distance. Stay safe, stay smart. We want to continue to use our mind and our body to the glory of God, not only for our own good, for the good of our fellow man. I want to remind you as well, our Christmas service will be this Thursday, December the 24th, 9:30 a.m. and 7 o'clock p.m. It'll be the same service. We're doing this so that we can social distance and so that people who don't drive at night can come during the day and still celebrate Christmas Eve, the birth of Christ. So mark that on your calendar. Plan to attend. Forest Oaks, 9:30 a.m., 7 o'clock p.m. We're getting close, aren't we? December the 20th today, right around the corner this week, we're going to be celebrating the birth of Christ. And we have focused during these series on the different things that have happened during Christmas, the Advent season, the symbols, if you will, of Christmas. We talked about the Advent wreath. Last week we talked about the menorah. What about the Christmas tree? Where did that come from? How did it get here into the church? We have trees in our homes. Where in the world did this come from? There are a lot of people, unfortunately, who believe that this is a pagan symbol and that this pagan symbol has made its way into the church. Not so. Not so. The story is this. One wintry night, Martin Luther was walking home. It was almost Christmas. He had preached there in Wittenberg. He was walking back to his house. And as he was walking, it was a cold, dark, snowy night, and he was walking amongst the evergreen trees, okay, the pine trees there in Germany. He happened to look up. It was a clear night, and there were stars that were sparkling in the night sky, a clear, cold night. And he looked at these stars that were sparkling, and he said, you know what? This is the light of the world. And look, during this time of the year, especially in northern Germany, everything is cold. It's dark. The trees are dead. They're leafless and they look lifeless, but not the evergreen. And so what he did, just like I did this week, he went out into the woods, carried his little hatchet, and he brought a tree just like this into his home to celebrate the birth of Christ. Isn't that beautiful? Let's put it here in our stand. We're going to have this up on Sunday and on Christmas Eve. Isn't that gorgeous? And we can decorate it during the service as well. Of course not! We don't want to do anything like that. This doesn't represent life or light or salvation. This thing is dead. That's what Martin Luther was looking at. And so he went out and found a little bitty evergreen tree, a pine tree. He cut it down. He carried it into the house. And I don't know how he did it, but somehow he hung candles on that tree. And he gathered the family around and he told them the story of Christmas, the story of Christ, the light of the world come into the world. Once again, can you imagine that? Katie Luther, your husband, comes dragging a tree into the house, sets it up there in the living room, and says, you know what, by the way, let's put flammable objects on this tree. Let's hang candles here and light them. But apparently Martin was stubborn enough, like all good Germans, and made it happen. The tradition continued. My dad, who was born in 1919, could remember that when he was a little boy, what they would do on Christmas Eve day, they'd go out into the woods and they would find a tree, a pine tree or sometimes a little cedar tree, cut it down, take it home, set it up. They would decorate it. And Dad said they had these little clips that would clip onto the branches, and the clips had little cups, and you would put a little tiny candle in the cup. When everything was ready, you lit the candles on Christmas Eve night. Turn out all the lights in the house, blow out all the lamps. That was before the advent of electric lights, okay? And so they would sit and they would see this tree with all the lights, and their dad, my grandfather, who was a Lutheran pastor, would read to them out of the Gospel of Luke, Luke chapter 2, the well-known account of the Christ child being born. He said they would only leave the candles burning for about 20 minutes because they didn't want the tree to catch on fire, burn the house down, but they would share the story of Christ. How did the Christmas tree come in the church? You know, Martin Luther never carried a Christmas tree into the church. Nobody in Luther's day carried a tree into the church. But today, you go to church after church, and you see at this time of the year Christmas tree decorations. In fact, counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got 5 Christmas trees here in our sanctuary. How did this happen? Come with me in time to 1839. In Cleveland, Ohio, Zion Lutheran Church, the pastor at Zion was a fellow by the name of Schwann, the Reverend Heinrich Schwann. He knew the story of Luther. He put a Christmas tree in his home, and he said, what about the house of God? This is God's house. Shouldn't we have the symbol of light, life, and salvation within the house of God? So what does he do? He goes out, just like Luther, goes out into the woods, cuts down a tree, takes it into the sanctuary, decorates it, puts lights on it. The Christmas Eve service, he has the acolyte light all of the little candles, and the people were in awe. They said, you know what, this is a great idea. And so that idea spread from that little church in Cleveland, Ohio, across Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, eventually spread all over the country, started by a Missouri Synod Lutheran pastor by the name of Schwann. You can Google him on the internet, Heinrich Schwann. Not only is he famous for bringing the Christmas tree into God's house, he also became the 3rd president of our synod. So he was a smart man, had a lot on the ball, and he shared with his people in a very significant way the message of Christ and how Christ has not only come into the world, but brings light and salvation. He comes into our heart as well. I encourage you today or sometime this week, maybe a great idea, if you have a Christmas tree in your house, which I'm guessing you do, and it has lights on it, turn out all the lights in the house tonight. All the lights except for the lights on the Christmas tree. Kind of like with the menorah candle. Remember we talked about that last week? How you light it, you let it burn for half an hour, and you sit and ponder the great things that God has done for you. Wouldn't that be a great tradition to carry on with the lighted Christmas tree? Plug it in, light those lights, turn out all the lights in the house, and sit and gaze upon the tree. Think of how God has blessed you. Think of the gifts that he brings into your life every single day. And ultimately, remember this. Sometimes some churches, what they do, they get a real tree, a live tree. They decorate it during the holidays. And then after the holidays are over, they save that tree. And during Lent, they take that tree, they remove all the needles, and they turn it into a cross. Because remember, one of the significant messages of the Christmas tree is that Christ, on the tree of the cross, forgave all of our sins. Friends, I pray God's blessings upon you. May his joy and peace be with you now and always. Bye-bye.